I am your host, Rodney Butler, and today we have a special guest on as part of our mental health series that we're doing. We have Mr. Kenneth Reddick II on today, and
Yes,
he
sir.
is going to enlighten us on on his journey on some mental health things that I think that we as a community really need to know, really need to hear. So without further ado, Brother Kenneth Reddick II, introduce yourself, brother, and tell us a little bit about who you are.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rodney. First of all, thank you for having me on the Black Man's Roundtable. It's interesting as I started some of the Brothers Brunch Foundation work in Douglasville, Georgia. I was told that I needed to connect with the Black Man's Roundtable, and here I am. So it's definitely a privilege to be here. So just so you all know who I am Kenneth Reddick II. I'm originally from Jacksonville, Florida, but spent most of my adult life up in Detroit, Michigan, and now I reside in Douglasville, Georgia. Started the Brothers Brunch Foundation about a couple of years ago now. I actually started selling T-shirts to support mental health and self-care, and I gave it to an organization, a wonderful organization in Atlanta called Joy Day. There's a young lady named Morgan that started it, and I gave some money, and I went on a walk with them at Sweetwater Park. And it was me and 5 young ladies. And the older guy told me, he said, "Man, you're lucky to be out here with these 5 young ladies." And I was like, that might not be the best thing for me to be out here in the woods with 5 young ladies. So I actually took off Mental Health Awareness Month. And as I took that month off to just reflect on the vision and purpose of what I was trying to do, I came up with, hey, we as black men, we don't have that safe space. So there are safe spaces, but it may not be in the area that we reside in. So I went down to Jacksonville, Florida, Father's Day weekend, and did my first Brothers Brunch. Had 10 men together, and we just had conversations around mental health, self-care, and just about life, being intentional about those conversations. I've had my personal journey, which has given me my motivation, but also I'm a 25-year pharmaceutical sales rep, and for 14 years, I only went to psychiatry offices. So do I have a background in mental health from medication and understanding the illness? Yes, I do. From a personal standpoint, do I identify? Yes, I do. Bipolar depressed is my official diagnosis, and yes, I do take my medication now, which makes me a lot better. But I also was a 30-year alcoholic that just celebrated 2 years of sobriety on the 2nd of February. So I have a journey, but I definitely wanted to just first address how everything came up with the Brothers Brunch Foundation. So we do quarterly events right now in Douglasville, Atlanta area, as well as Jacksonville, Florida, just to get men together. We've had holiday relaxations to introduce men to sound bath, oxygen bars, foot detoxes, those things that we may not normally do to take care of ourselves. But also we stress the importance of understanding what our traumas are, not only with us, but with our kids, our families, and our communities. And we also have a second Tuesday night talk that is done hybrid. So I've had folks on from Florida, Chicago, Houston, as well to join in just to have conversations. If anybody sees one of my cards, it doesn't say that I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a motivational conversationalist. We have enough conferences. We have enough times where men get together, somebody gets on stage, we give them a round of applause, and what happens after that? Well, that's where the Brothers Brunch Foundation comes in, because we are continuously helping each other so that we can be better men for ourselves, for our families, and ultimately for the community. Our purpose and our ultimate mission is to help 25 black men in each city intentionally with what they need to get kick-started on a new mental health and self-care journey. That could be therapy, chiropractor, esthetician, dietitian, whatever it is, just first 6 sessions. That number 6 is a big number, because if we think about it, it takes 6 to 7 times to tell someone something for them to truly get it. It takes 6 months of changing a behavior before you actually see a change. So it puts in that part about being intentional, not just for what we want to change, but being intentional with expectations of change. And that's what happens in mental health, is that we don't take care of our mental health the way we should. So as a result, we end up having some type of mental illness. And when we have that mental illness, a lot of folks just don't understand. And we need these circles so that we can understand and relate to each other. So that's kind of in a nutshell of how Brothers Brunch Foundation came about. We can get into a little bit more about me personally, if you like, or, if there was anything else.
Well, I tell you what, Kenneth, that's a good segue, not a segue, but a good transition, a good, I guess, segue into what I was going to ask you about. First of all, congratulations, man, on your sobriety. Congratulations on, everything that you're doing in the community. People see you out there. I see you out there. And, you talk about people telling you that this is a platform that you need to get on. Man, when I observed the things that you were doing, the things that you are doing out in the community, I'm like, I got to get this guy on, right? So I guess it was a mutual thing, but and then of course, we found each other or met each other formally at a common event that we were at. And hey, it was on and popping from there, brother.
Yes, sir.
And so yeah. So but look, one of the things, because I know that you are known in the community as Scooter. And I want for you to, let the people know how that came about. And, because you dropped a bunch of stuff on us just then, right? So I want to kind of lighten it up with Scooter, because I know how serious you are about this brunch foundation, about the Brothers Brunch Foundation. But yeah, tell us how Scooter came about, man.
Okay. Well, let me tell you first. One of the things I didn't mention about the Brothers Brunch Foundation, I don't think I said, is that, and I may have said it, but I love to repeat it, because people have to understand that it's not a time to eat. A lot of people hear that brunch and always think it's time to eat. No, we trying to feed each other, and that's the thing that we don't do is we don't feed each other that healthy nutrition that we need most of the time. So
so a lot of it is about spiritual nurturing the nutrition, not necessarily food.
Exactly. Most of the time we'll have a little bit of something to snack on,
right.
But for the most part, it's just about the conversation and being fed. The spiritual, like you said, a lot has happened with Scooter over the years, and I joke sometimes, and I just celebrated my 50th birthday, and it was the first time I was really out partying the way that I was without drinking. And people that knew me before were like, Scooter, you still the same. And it's like, well, now the old Scooter might have been stumbling a little bit, or, the night wouldn't have gone as well. And so Scooter is a childhood nickname that has been with me for all of my life. Even everybody in my current company, from executives to new representatives, either they call me Scooter or Uncle Scooter. Like I said, I've always been the life of the party. I was Mr. FAMU when I went to FAMU. Used to dance all the time, and I still do. And but Scooter grew up very privileged. Fortunate my parents still together, so I don't have some of those traumas that some people may talk about, as in not having a father, or growing up in a certain type of home. I mean, I was very privileged, but the reality is that privilege was also a trauma for me, because when I got to college, I had to realize that, hey, Scooter wasn't the same little Scooter anymore. I was a little guy. I was a year ahead in school, so I graduated just turning 17. So I didn't identify with some of my stressors or my mental challenges at that point in time. It probably happened right around my sophomore year that I got triggered. There's this thing called approval addiction. which a lot of us don't realize. But when we apologize a lot, or we always trying to make sure everybody else is happy, or we get upset because others may not be happy, or we felt as though we've disappointed, that's probably my first episode that I realized, even though I used to cry a lot as a kid. So I probably, as I think back on it, even through this conversation, there were probably some things that were there as a child that just may not have gotten, recognized. So my first episode was in college, doing a lot of drinking, first time I actually tried to take my life, to be honest, and saw a counselor for a minute in college, but really didn't stick with it. Really didn't, I don't know if I just didn't want to identify, or, even with the stigma in our communities, it's something that we would normally think that, okay, well, maybe this is it. Somebody may have thought, hey, he's just having a rough time. Well, through that, having different situations, encounters with the law, all of those things that had come into play, it just started to manifest. If people don't know what bipolar depression is, it's you have some depressive episodes that can get real deep, but then you have what you call the manic episodes. And a lot of people don't understand that it could be, hypersexuality, spending a lot of money, just those sorts of things. But people look at it as, you have to be just this bad, terrible person. No, you can identify with some of these mental illnesses and still be a normal functioning person, as I was. So I ran into other troubles with drinking and driving, all those sorts of things, breathalyzers on cars. And, 2 years ago, I had gotten triggered and I went out on a binge. I literally went out for about 2 or 3 days just drinking, and I ended up going to a neighbor's house, an old neighbor, and I was sitting out there in front of the liquor store, and I always remember.
Now, Kenneth, not to cut you off, you said 2 years ago?
Two years ago, yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So like I said, I was 30-year alcoholic since college.
Right.
And 2 years ago had just built a brand new house and everything, gotten promoted to executive rep and platinum performer, all that great stuff that people would never think that I was going through, the challenges in my mind that I was, partially due to the alcohol, because a lot of people don't realize is that alcohol plays an important role on the neurotransmitters of your brain. So we don't think about it that actually a hangover is not just dehydration. You put your mind and your body in a state of depression. I was reading an article yesterday that was even talking about how it works on the GABA in the brain, and how you actually increase your anxiety with alcohol. And we have to think, the more we drink, even if we don't drink a lot, if we drink on a regular basis, we're never allowing our mind to truly reset itself so that we can have a good mood. And that's something that, that we aren't taught. So for myself, yes, I was at that point where I was at a rock bottom, and I went to the liquor store next to where I was trying to find my buddy, got me a Gatorade. Of course, I want to try to replenish myself, because I've been out drinking for a few days. But guess what? I had a bottle of Parmesan Peach. I poured right back in that Gatorade bottle and sat there and was drinking. And I sat next to a bum, and he started cussing me out. And at first it seemed kind of funny, you sitting there, he cussing you out. It's like, man, this dude crazy. But then it clicked. I'm sitting right there with him. So the same way that I would ride by and look at people and wonder how they end up there, I was that guy that just built a brand new big house on a brand new big lot and had all the accolades, but I was sitting right there next to him. Did I have thoughts of taking my life then? Yes. Was I successful? No, thank God, because I have 7-year-old son now, and he had just celebrated his 5th birthday. So I had a lot to live for, but my mind didn't allow me to truly think that. And so I was supposed to have an appointment with my psychiatrist that day. I missed it. It was a virtual call. She called me back that afternoon, and I was like, "Who called you?" She was like, "Nobody called me. What's going on?" I said, "I've been on the binge for 3 days." She said, "Well, what's happening?" I said, "I need some help." She said, "What's stopping you?" I said, "Nothing." And so I called my daughter, and she called her on the phone with me. And my daughter was 22 then, she's 24 now. And my daughter came and picked me up and took me to detox. And when I came out of detox, the impact that I had on things that I was telling people, and just the conversations I had, and to experience that, was definitely life changing. And when I came out, as my father always told me, son, pray for the taste to be removed from your mouth. And when I came out, the taste was removed. And since then, what I tell people is, when you deal with mental illness, you may get triggered once you get the proper treatment. You may get triggered, but you don't get stuck the way that you used to. I mean, I may get triggered now. I may be down for a day, but I used to be down for a week. And people would think that, well, why, you got to go to work, you got to do this, you can't do that. But when you're truly struggling with mental illness, and this is something for folks that even have family members, because I've had the best support all my life, sometimes, you have to understand that a person that has mental illness just doesn't know how to just stop drinking, stop using drugs, just getting up when they need to. I mean, it just doesn't happen like that for us. And, my parents, one of my biggest things I always say is that now my parents can sleep at night because they know that I'm doing the things that I need to do. Now the people that see me, like you say, people see me in the community. I mean, I have a therapist that was virtual. One time I was at Papa John's just passing cards out. And then the guy called the therapist's name. I didn't even know it was him because I'd never seen him in person. But that's just how adamant I am about us as black men, us as black people, us as a community, taking care of our mental health and not letting it get to the point of mental illness. So now that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing the work that I do. I'm actually down here in Jacksonville, Florida now. Yep. And I had a meeting the other day about getting together a Black Men's Mental Health Conference with some leaders here in the area. So my passion doesn't come from education. My passion doesn't come from what I saw. My passion comes from what I've experienced. And I've truly found my purpose. There's two things that come along with the Brothers Brunch Foundation that I always talk about. Number one is PCP, positive, consistent, and present. We can always talk positive. We can go and hear positive people. We can do some positive things. But if we're not consistent, we're not present for ourselves, we're not present for our families, and ultimately, we're not present for our communities. And the other thing is, one of the things you said about being very spiritual. Yes, this is very spiritual, because one thing I say is you have to listen to your spirit and stop trying to figure everything out in your mind. Because when you listen to your spirit, you find your purpose. And when you find your purpose, you find your peace. And that's why even on my site, the only shirts that you have on there, my Brothers Brunch Foundation shirts, you have a positive, consistent, and present shirt as a reminder, and you have my purpose is my peace, because those are some things that I stand on. And no matter where I go, I'd say probably 80% of my conversations are aligned to my purpose, and that's Brothers Brunch Foundation and our efforts to truly strengthen and support each other around our mental health and self-care.
Appreciate it. Hey, Kenneth, one thing that you talked about, well, first of all, this brother is not lying when he said he's in Florida. He was working. We were doing work on the phone. I think he was at the beach, or you were just coming from the beach. When we were talking yesterday, and I'm like, hey, this brother never stops. Even while he's on the beach, enjoying the beach, he is talking with me on the phone to make sure that that we're squared away for today. So, and then it's just other conversations. So, stereotypes. Like you said, right? You come from a nuclear family, mother, father, as you described it, a very privileged family. The parents were there, So I think sometimes we paint a negative picture, or some kind of we paint an inaccurate picture of what we perceive to be, a person that's going to be strung out on drugs, strung out on alcohol, and other types of, addictions, because there's so many more addictions other than drugs and alcohol that are out there, right? But I want you to talk about some of the misconceptions, some of the stereotypes that people need to get out of their heads.
Okay. And that's key, because there are many stereotypes. Like I said, a lot of people think that you have to be so far gone or look a certain way, because there's a term of the functioning alcoholic. I mean, I was the epitome of a functioning alcoholic. I mean, when I tell people that when I stopped drinking, I was literally drinking a pint a day, people are like, a pint a day? Yeah, it was a pint a day, and sometimes more. It just depends. I would about a pint just to make sure that, hey, that's all I drank. So people don't look at normal people as people that could have mental illness. But the thing about it is that the stereotype has to stop. The stigma has to stop, because all of us go through different things. All of us go through different things at different times, at different levels. Some people may just get depressed, be down for a moment. Some people may be depressed for a long time. All of us have suffered from depression. A lot of people think that, hey, a person has to be schizophrenic, out hearing voices or those sorts of things. Yeah, that all of these things that happen are sometimes more so genetic, or at least it is because of a chemical imbalance that we may have. Take, for instance, sundowning, or they call it seasonal affective disorder. Everybody knows when it starts getting darker a little bit earlier, we don't have as much energy. I mean, we're not going like we would normally do when the sun is shining. So we have to understand that some people's chemical imbalance, where we need the sun more, we need the light to feel better, that's normal. That's something that we go through. We have to protect our mental health at all costs. We focus so much on mental illness. Mental illness is not always the problem. Mental illness is a point that the problem had gotten to. Take, for instance, I have my son. My son is 7 years old. I proactively put him into therapy just because his mind needs to be molded. His mind needs to be able to be free. We as parents, for so many intergenerational traumas, and it gets into the stereotypes, because we don't want our child to be this. We don't want our child to be that. Ain't nothing wrong with my child. That's the worst thing that we can do. The way we break these stereotypes and the way we break these stigmas is by taking advantage of all the resources that we have to protect and to nurture our mental health. All of us have benefits, okay? How many of us use the benefits? I mean, if we were to even take a poll on here, how many people actually take advantage of therapy? But then we always say that we wish we had somebody to talk to. Well, you got somebody to talk to that you're already paying for, and it's healthy conversation. I tell everyone that you need to get someone that you do not have an emotional connection to. Because even though somebody's going to tell you, they're going to tell you like it is, they unbiased, they still have some type of thought because they know you. Sometimes people that have mental illness, we don't need a hug. We might just need a piece of tissue just to go through what we need to go through. I mean, how many of us go and get a massage? We can get that covered under medical benefits. That's a stress relief. I give myself a woo-saw moment every week to just go and unwind, just because there is a stigma that is out there. There is a stereotype about people with mental illness, but we don't do anything about our mental health to not end up in that stereotype or end up being, frustrated or unwilling to get the help because of the stigma that we have in our communities. And we have to stop that. All of us are normal. All of us are normal people. We're just made up differently. I mean, it's just like a car. I mean, a car may have some tires. You gotta get them balanced. You got to get new tires. You got to go get the oil change, to keep your engine running. If you don't keep your battery charged, then your light's going to go out. That's you. You take your car to the shop. Why not take yourself to the shop and get regular maintenance? And I'm not talking about just the 6-month checkup or the yearly checkup, because half of us as black men don't even do that. So yeah, the stereotype is there, and I'd say the stereotype affects us the most because we don't get the help that we need.
I was looking at a statistic the other day, and it talked about since COVID, the amount of mental illness has risen a lot in the with people of color. In the statistic, it showed African Americans, and it showed Latinos, and it showed Asians, and the number of suicides, from suicides to addictions, everything had gone up, right? And so, but what I'm glad about, what I'm feeling in our community, for so long, it was taboo to, seek mental health, to seek any kind of mental health, right? And since I've been doing this roundtable for about a year and a half or so, the mental health episodes that I do are actually they get the most views. They're the most popular, okay, along with veterans, my veterans interviews, episodes that I do. And so I guess I want you to talk a little bit about when you talked about the taboo and the stigmas of mental health, but am I seeing what I think I'm seeing, which is that seeking mental health, seeking therapy is becoming less and less and less taboo in the black community?
Yeah, it is. I believe we still have a long way to go. There is progress. If we look at some of the, groups that are around and the men that get together, and the thing about it is that we have different groups, but they're in silos. Once we start bringing these groups together and have this resounding sound around the mental health, I think it will get greater. But yes, there has been a change. You mentioned an interesting point about COVID and people and the rise in mental health and addiction and those sorts of things. I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago going on Nextdoor, and Nextdoor app can be pretty interesting at times.
Yeah, I check it out every now and then.
Yeah, and the thing I was trying to enlighten the people there on, because there was an incident that happened at the mall, and everybody always talks about shut down the mall or do this or do that. That doesn't change the problem. What it is that what we're faced with, especially after COVID, especially in our area, you're looking at lack of jobs. You're looking at pay that is not affordable for people to live, which is causing extra stress and those sorts of things after COVID. And so therefore, yes, people are suffering more because the standards that they have to navigate through are not at a substantial rate right now, where you have more people that are succeeding. Yes, you may have more jobs and more people may be placed in certain jobs, but what are the jobs paying for them to survive? I go over to the homeless camp there in Douglasville and take clothes and talk to the men over there, and some of them have jobs, but they just can't afford to live. So when you have all of that, and like I say, we're all human, of course, you're going to have some sparks that aren't going to work as properly. And, some sparks that may get the sparking, and, hey, you go off. And it's an unfortunate reality, and it's an unfortunate reality that's not just in our neighborhoods, but we're seeing it across. And that's why I'm down here in Jacksonville and I want to go to other areas so that we can, have some type of consistency around this mental health. So like I said, you won't have the increase if we take care of what we need to as at our foundation or at our base, then we won't have the catastrophes for mental illness that we have. But everyone is talking, and the other thing, we don't have the mental health professionals like we used to. We don't have the mental health facilities. People end up in the hands of the police now. I had an opportunity to speak to about 20 sheriff deputies a few weeks ago. And, they asked me, they said, well, what do we do when we approaching someone that is homeless, that, may be suffering from mental illness? And I told them, you have to take every situation as an individual situation and not overreact, because these people have no choice of where they may be. But if we don't understand, and if we don't take the time with these people, what are they going to do to us if they don't have a weapon and someone is mentally ill? What can they actually do to them to hurt them? And they have to take that into consideration before the first thing is, oh, they're acting out. We got to tackle them. We got to do this. And I saved a man one day on Fulton Industrial who was having a psychotic break. And I called 988. If people don't know on here about 988, call 988 before you call 911. That is the crisis line. I called both at the same time. And I followed this young man, no shirt, no shoes, cold, rainy outside. And I followed him home with 988 on one phone and 911 on the other, just because in those crisis situations, unfortunately, our law enforcement may not always address the situation appropriately. So, yes, do we have a rise after COVID? Yes, because there's a whole change in our society since then, which is causing a lot of mental health breaks, I'd say, for our people, especially our Black people.
And the people talk about how most of the people that are in our jails and in our prisons are people with mental health issues. And of course, our jails and prisons are becoming our mental health hospitals or mental health facilities. Police officers are not trained to deal, with people with mental health, or very, very, very little training. But and so I think that a lot of times with our people in our community, the very first time that we come in contact with someone based on our mental health issue is the police. Mm-hmm. You see, and so whether we are depressed or whether we are suffering some kind of substance abuse or whatever, it's usually law enforcement is who we as a community come in contact with. And so and we know that when we are suffering mental illness by abusing drugs and those kind of things, we know that it is not looked at as a medical situation. Okay. Right. So, when the crack epidemic, was happening in, in the 80s and in the 90s, it was lock them all up, but now, with the meth and the other, what's the other one? Can't think of, and all these pills and codeine and all this stuff, because of the community that is affecting, right. Now it's a medical situation. You got cops and first responders, running around with those, pins, that you stick in the person's thigh, to keep them from overdosing, So yeah, the disparities is something I want you to hit on just real quickly. The disparities in how we talk about institutional racism, right? This is what would be considered institutional racism, and I would like for you to talk about the disparities between how the majority, the white community, is looked at, versus the our community.
Yeah, and that's been a problem for a while. I mean, if we look at all the, I mean, if we just think about even back COVID, George Floyd and, some of the other situations that happened. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of that, we can't change how we're looked at. We have to change our behaviors. And that's where those disparities come into play, even for the healthcare or awareness. We honestly have to protect ourselves. I was blessed to be able to go in there and have a talk with those deputies. And I was glad that I was asked a question about, how can I approach someone? Because at least we know that with some of the deputies that are out there, that they want to do better. They don't want to have the stigma, even as the officer, that's going to show up and be abusive. But that's something that, unfortunately, like I said, we can't change. We have to work on ourselves. And we have to make sure that we have the understanding of a couple of things. Number one, take care of your mental health so you won't end up in that situation. Okay, because if our mental health, I got pulled over one night driving home. I was out Ubering, and I was just in my car. And the guy tried to tell me that I ran a stop sign. Then he said, well, you slowed down, but you didn't stop. So he was just mainly messing with me. I drive a Dodge Charger, tinted windows. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm just trying to go home. And, I could tell when the officer let me go. Well, he didn't let me go. Of course, he's going to give me a ticket for the stop sign because he didn't have nothing else. But he looked a little frustrated because he didn't smell anything coming out the car. He didn't smell anything on me. Pretty much targeting. And I know one of the guys that's running for sheriff now, he shares a story where, he was targeted. Like I said, unfortunately, we have to try to do the best to keep ourselves out of the situation. Now, one thing that you mentioned that kind of triggered a thought too was that we should also make sure that we have the understanding of the calling of the 988. Okay, so that way, if we are present when a situation happens, if we call 988 and explain to them what's going on, even if the officer comes and we explain to them, hey, this person is clearly having this or that or whatever, I got 988 on the phone. Hey, that may change their behavior there just because they know that they have another professional that's monitoring the situation as they're doing. So it's almost like we have to kind of use the tools, number one, not to get in a situation, but also when the situation happens, we have to make sure that we're making the right calls and we're utilizing the right resources so that we can help the situation. But if we don't know that, then we won't think about calling or trying to do something different. I've had my run-ins, like I say, with the police myself. So I know how it feels. I mean, I still kind of, hey, somebody pull up behind me. I'm like, what they want? I had somebody run my tags another time, tried to say I was swerving. I'm doing an Uber ride. So yes, the targeting is not going to change, unfortunately, especially in some of the areas like where we're in, unfortunately. But like I said, let's take care of our mental health so that we can make the best decisions, because how many times have we been, or I can say where I've been, where I've seen someone that is just like, please just don't do anything. And then they just continue to, where, if they would have done the things for their mental health, or if someone could have protected them, then yes, it could have been a better outcome. So can we change the society? No. Can we change ourselves to be better in society and to have a better society? Yes.
Great points. And like you said, we can't change what's in someone's heart. We can't do it. Okay. But what we can do is we can make and change policy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
I may not know what's in your heart, but I sure do know what the policy is. You know what I'm saying? So we have to work on all this stuff collectively. Go ahead, Kenneth.
And that's the other thing. I don't mean to cut you off, Rodney, but when you say policy, one of the things we have to understand is that a lot of things that go on in legislation, just like Rodney and I met at a candidacy event. I never would have thought I would have been going to different to see the candidates speak and to be as involved as I am. But I know what's going on, and when it comes to change, that's the only way. We have to know who we're voting for. We have to know what they stand for. And even when I was at one of the debates, I asked the sheriff's candidates, the officers, some of them have mental illness, and they're going to interact with people that have mental illness. What are we going to do to make that change? And those are the things, like you say, policy is so key, but we don't think we want to complain about everything, and we want to say we don't have, and we don't want to say what the officers do. But are we voting for the right people? When they talk about voting counts, I don't think I've ever understood it more in the last 3 months since I've been watching these candidates and trying to understand what's going on. I truly understand now how my vote counts, but we as a people have to get to that point. If we have problems in schools, if we need more counselors, if we need more presence, are we at the school board meetings? Are we at the PTA meetings? Are we at the, city council meetings? We can't talk about anything that happens unless we're actually there getting involved in the policies to try to make that change. So from a political standpoint, we have to be there and be present to see some of these changes that can happen for it. And that goes for the jobs, that goes for the income, that goes for the facilities that we need and the funding. I mean, they have to have the funding to support mental. They have to have the funding to support the police officers so that they can get more training. But if they don't have the funding, it can't happen. But who votes for those things? We do.
Kenneth, our motto on the Black Man's Roundtable, or at least our tagline, is see you in those suites and those streets, right? What I've learned is that some of the people like yourself who has gone through, life, who life has not been all glitz and glamour. They've been through some things. What I've learned, and I'm talking directly to, some of the policymakers out there, all right, is that these are some of your most engaged people. Once they come out of whatever situation that they've been in, they are literally, and again, I know because I'm in those streets and those suites for real, what I know is that they, like yourself, like you said, we met at a political event. You see, and they are some of just 2 years ago. That's why I wanted you to repeat that earlier, in your commentary, and I wanted people to know, no, this was just 2 years ago.
Right.
This guy you looking at was sitting next to, a bum, or what we call bums, a guy, an alcoholic or whatever, in the street. And this wasn't that long ago. And now you're out here engaged politically. And so, yes, policy is very, very important. Now, and again, I go back to saying that some of the most politically or socially engaged people that I've met, they've been through things very, very similar to you, to what you've been through. So I definitely want the policy makers I want them to hear that. I want them to hear it loud and proud. Some of your most fervent followers or supporters are literally right down in the county jails. They are in the prisons. If you just create policy for them, to give them an opportunity, to give them an opportunity to reintegrate themselves back into the community, they are some of the most engaged people. And I've had shows to where I've had obviously politicians on. It's political season. It's a presidential election year, and they've talked about, and feel free to talk about it once I'm finished with this bit, is they've talked about our community service board, our CSB, our local CSB here, in Douglas County, and the things that they do for people who are seeking what you were seeking just 2 years ago. And of course, policy, what do? We cut their budget, right? We cut their budget. So there are so many other Kenneth Reddicks out there, but if we lose stuff like the CSB, if they cut the funding and those kind of things, then they never get to have, never get to be on the Black Man's Roundtable like what you're doing this evening.
Right, and that's so true. I've, like I say, my history in pharmaceuticals. I used to visit all the community health centers, some of the hospitals, and those sorts of things. And it's sad that it would be good that if we didn't have them because we didn't need them, but it's sad when we don't have them because of funding. That is something that we truly have to make sure that we tune in on. I've listened to the candidates, and I've been impressed with some of them. And we have to understand. One of the things that you were talking about too was that, talking about my 2 years and talking about me and what I do and how interacting with candidates and different people. It goes back to my purpose is my peace. When 2 years ago, I realized I had to go through the detox center because I had to know what that felt like. Because I had to know, even to talk to the politicians, that, hey, I've been there. I know what these people are going through because I'm one of them. I was on Highway 5 at the Burger King, and a guy came out the back, and I thought he was an Uber ride, but he was actually a guy who was in detox with me. That turned a light on for me that, hey, this is my purpose. I've gone through everything, and this is what we have to realize, even for the people that are incarcerated. Everybody has gone through something to get to their purpose. And those guys have a story to tell of what they've been through. And I know we're talking about releasing some people for certain things, and certain counties now are putting in place to have more of a integrated approach back to society around mental health. But these are policies that are starting to pop up, but we need to have more of a voice so that we can have more of these programs so that these through. And if I didn't have my houses and everything that I had built, people would just look at me as someone that's out here that's an alcoholic. I was fortunate, I was blessed to make it out to this side. And there are other people inside those facilities that need to be outside to tell their stories to make that change. So yes, that is very important that we have more programs in the prisons, in the schools, in the homes, because that's where all of it starts. And we can make some changes, but we have to start at the home, and we have to start with our children, because I'm 50 years old. My son is 7. How am I supposed to truly be able to help him navigate mentally through today's society? Me trying to teach him, or even some others that may be younger than me, I may be passing on some intergenerational traumas, but we don't think of it that way. But a lot of people have learned through their intergenerational traumas, and a lot of those people may have been at that last, as I say, rock bottom point, and they're in prison, but they truly have a better story to tell.
All right. Let's see. We have a few more minutes left. I wanted you to talk about how parents, because like you said, you come from a nuclear family. You had the mother and your father in the home. I want you to talk a little bit about some things that maybe your parents might have missed, to where you talk to the parents today, where they can help them see some things that they can look for in their child or in their children, with mental health, with mental illness.
Okay. And let me say this, Rodney, because one of the things that I continue, and I work with the National Parents Union as well, and we did a series in February called Fathers Mending and Healing. And my biggest thing is that let's not let our kids get to the point where their mental illness is at a point that it's going to take more to come back than it would to start from the beginning. We as parents have to make sure, like I say, get our kids into therapy early on. There's a lot of stuff that we may not notice, and I can't honestly say what my parents may have missed, but I understand that with my child now, I'm going to know more about what's going on with him because he has a therapist. We as adults want to go and get a life coach. We want to talk to a financial advisor. What are we doing for our kids? They need to be molded earlier, and they need to be coached and guided. And like I just mentioned, all we're doing a lot of times is passing intergenerational traumas. I'm going to tell you something funny. My son, we were going to Chattanooga, and my son was telling somebody we were going to the beach. And I said, "There's no beaches in Chattanooga, son." He said, "Yes, it is. Siri said so." He asked Siri, and Siri said that there's 14 beaches in Chattanooga. Now, whether they're man-made beaches or not, to my son, there are beaches in Chattanooga. Now, not that my parents did it, but I know a lot of parents might have been, "Boy, shut up. Boy, hush. Ain't no beaches in Chattanooga. Boy, I'm going to pop you in your mouth. Stop lying." Just think of how many kids, because we did not give them the opportunity to live in the generation that they're in, how much we hindered them, or how much further they could have been if they would have had a life coach early on that even could have helped us out. So I can't say that my parents really missed anything. They were always there, always for support. One thing I will say is that when a person gets to the point that they're suffering, and that they're suffering from mental illness, one thing that you cannot do is necessarily offer them direct advice. We love people. That's why I say everybody needs somebody that doesn't have an emotional attachment, because trying to give advice sometimes is more of a trigger. I mean, I get frustrated. I'd not want to talk. I'd go out, drink, go on a binge, those sorts of things. And I've actually helped some families recently where they've changed their approach to somebody in their family that's an alcoholic, and now they're 6 months sober. Just because I told them, you can't keep pushing. We have to, people, when they're ready to make that decision, they've hit that rock bottom, then they'll do it. Parents, there's only so much that you can do. And I have a parent that I'm working with now, and I have to tell them, hey, there's nothing you can do but offer them hope. I know someone that was an addict, and their son is an addict out on the streets. He may go and give them their ID if they lose their ID, and give them a hug. But as an addict, he understands that he doesn't want to say or do anything to trigger them. So for our kids, we have to offer them. My son, he gets excited. He was upset because we were out of town, and he's like, I was supposed to go see my therapist. When am I going to see my therapist? And I made it a norm for him. And if we do that with our kids, they can be so much more successful, so much more open-minded, and not live in our traumas that we're trying to raise them in on what to do and what not to do. Yes, we can guide them. Yes, we are their parents and we love them. But the days of saying that I know what's best for my child, if that stops, our children will have a lot better mental health.
Absolutely. And lastly, I just want to talk real quick. We got a few more minutes. I want to talk real quick about how mental health and physical health are connected. So, as a people, as Black people, we will go to our primary care, physician or manager or whatever it's called, in a heartbeat. Any little thing wrong from the neck down, we hurry up and go to the doctor. But when it comes to the neck up, we're very hesitant about that. So talk just a little bit about, and we'll close it out on the connection with mental health and physical health. Okay,
it's so important. I was telling you I do a couple of things for Woosah moments. I mentioned the therapist. I go to the chiropractor. I literally went to the chiropractor one time when my blood pressure was high, and I had 143 over 143. No, I'm sorry, it was 163 over 103. After I went to my chiropractor, who is an old school chiropractor, I left out of there and my blood pressure was down to 143/93. Yes, it was still high, but think about your blood pressure, your stress, your tension points. That was a physical move, but that helped my blood pressure, which is going to help my stress. You know, going to get that massage, going to the physical therapist, getting stretched out, all those tension points. Things that we do physically that relaxes us, relaxes our mind. Meditation, sleep. One of my biggest things was sleep, physical and mental. Sleep is so important. I mean, I was burning at both ends of the candle when I had my last break. We have to do more than just going to the doctor. We have to take care of our minds, and it's not just reading. Being intentional around our conversations. Like I say to men, doing yoga. I've had those situations. As a part of the Brothers Brunch Foundation, when men have things going on, I may tell them there's a place of Kai in Douglasville with the salt cave and the oxygen bar and all that stuff. I say, hey, you want to go up here just to get some fresh oxygen, let your feet breathe, whatever it is, all of that stuff. We don't take that into consideration when we think that all of that helps us mentally, because we're relaxing our mind, we're relaxing our bodies, and we're re-energizing. I was a soccer coach for my son. I was doing Uber. I had my regular job. I was doing the foundation. And people say, how do you do all that? I say, because I take care of myself. So once you truly start to take care of yourself physically and take your mental health seriously, then that's when you win. And that's why I'm winning now.
Yes, you are. Look, man, I appreciate it. It was a conversation. I didn't want it to necessarily, we didn't want it to be a Q&A like we talked about. Wanted it to be a conversation, man, and you really had a conversation this evening. And I just want for the viewers to know and for the listeners to know that Mr. Kenneth Reddick II will not be a one-time guy. I definitely look forward to him contributing when it comes down to mental health issues, and we'll be tapping back into specifically, things that he's doing in the area to help. Hey, look, he's out here for everybody, but like me, there's a focus, and his focus is on black men. I'm Black Men's Roundtable. We are about everybody, but our focus is black men. And right now, with some of the things that is happening in our community, black men should be the focus. So I appreciate everything, Kenneth, that you're out there doing in the community. I appreciate you coming on to the show. I look forward to having, we're doing a whole entire mental health series. And will we have, professionals with a bunch of letters behind their name, in front of their name? Yeah. But sometimes you got to have that guy who understand what is, and not to say they don't, but that understands what's going on, as we say in the sweet and in the street. So, but look, close it out, brother. Let us know how can people reach you, and how can they help you?
Okay. Well, you can find me at www.brothersbrunchfoundation.com. On Instagram is at Brothers Brunch Foundation Inc. And also on Facebook, it's Brothers Brunch Foundation Inc. You can find me at those spots. Also, you'll find me in the community. I'm always out and about. Next week, we have the Tuesday night talks. We hold that at the Nichols Center, which is a partner in the community. So you can definitely come out next Tuesday from 6 to 8. I also do that hybrid. So if you can't make it out, you can always shoot me a message. I'll send you the YouTube link. But we operate on grants and donations, always to help the men. One of the things you understand about Brothers Brunch Foundation is I run it truly as a nonprofit. Whatever we do for the men, we don't want to charge the men because we never want anybody to miss out because they thought that they couldn't afford it or they thought that we were trying to make money. So whatever donations, if you're a business, whatever sponsorships to help us support the men, like I said, we want to have 25 men to support for 6 sessions each in each city outside of the events that we're doing. So any support that you can do and any men that you know that can benefit or just need a safe space. We're like a non-official support group. So I'm also affiliated with the National Alliance for Mental Illness, which I'll be running some support groups there as well. But the most you could do for me is just send men that need help. If they don't want to participate in the group, hey, still send them to me. I'll talk with them. And as you mentioned, Rodney, the Douglas County Community Service Board is another partner. I've sent a couple of guys over there as well. So whatever you need to do better, be better with your mental health and self-care, the Brothers Brunch Foundation will help you find a way.
Well, again, thank you, Mr. Kenneth Reddick II. It's been a great discussion. Absolutely, man. It's been a great discussion. Look forward to us doing this again. And to everybody out there, until next time, we will see you out in them streets and them suites.
All right. Thank you. Peace.
Don't forget to check us out on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Do you have show ideas or want to be on the show? Shoot us an email at blackmansroundtable@gmail.com. And please follow us on Facebook.